We're going to get started. So if everyone's ready to go, I see the chat starting. Thank you, everyone. Very excited. Q&A is open. Chat is open. Use whatever you want as long as we can see you and hear you. We are very happy because that's what this is really all about. Welcome to PSA, the Pro Sports Authority. And what we are really talking about today, Pro Sports League leadership. This is all about leadership. Leadership is not about age. Leadership is not about title. Leadership is about action, and we all have the power to activate change if we choose to in any industry. And most importantly, the sports industry. Sports is such an industry, role model industry for collaboration, for team, for partnership, for engagement, for understanding that our differences are our greatest strength. We need different types of people in sports to win the game. There is no I in team, and in sports, it really is about the we. So I am so thrilled, especially in talking about how we bring more visibility to women in sports, the role of women in sports, why we need diversity in sports to make the game evolve and the leadership evolve on so many levels. So with that, I am so thrilled, inspired, and honored to be welcoming Michele Meyer-Shipp. So welcome.
Thanks, Shelley. Happy to be here.
Well, you're just a badass in every way. And so for everyone that doesn't know Michele, Michele is the Chief People and Culture Officer of Major League Baseball, the MLB. So whoop, whoop. Very exciting. Baseball. I mean, do you remember as a little girl, did you as a little girl watch baseball?
No, believe it or not, I didn't. So funny and ironic story. I grew up watching football. So, to turn around and fast forward, well into my career and have this awesome job in baseball, everyone in my family was like, wow, now that's interesting. And I love it. I actually have spent a lot of time getting to know the game. I can't wait to go to my first game ever this weekend. I'm really excited. I'm loving this.
So what was that moment that you thought, what were you doing before you got into MLB?
So I started my career as an employment attorney, and I practiced law for about a decade. And I practiced employment law, and I want to be specific in that because it had everything to do with people and people issues. And I realized about a decade in that I didn't enjoy litigating. I didn't like the fight. I didn't like all the crap that came with the discovery process before a trial. And many of my cases settled on the courthouse steps, because parties wanted to one party wanted a party to apologize, or somebody just wanted to be heard. And I'm like, wait a minute, we just spent 3 years litigating this matter for you to settle on the courthouse steps because you wanted an apology. And I started to realize that I got more joy and felt a better sense of purpose in helping people and helping organizations be proactive, manage issues, manage employee relations, bring people together, drive courageous conversations across difference than I did with the litigation. So I left private practice and I worked in a couple of different jobs in a couple of different industries doing in-house employment law counseling. And that led me to discover a joy for all things HR, all things diversity and inclusion. And before you knew it, I started landing roles that I truly believe set me up for the role that I have today. That's how I got here.
That is amazing. And what you just said, like the best conversation or the deal closer was on the steps. It wasn't in the courtroom with the formality and the bureaucracy and it was about having a conversation.
That's right.
And listening and hearing one another. And talking about what's wrong to create the new right versus all the speak that we have that doesn't get you very far other than angrier or more contentious.
That's right.
Wow, so you are perfectly poised to be Chief People and Culture Officer. That is for sure. Okay, so we have to go back to one thing because you opened it up and tossed the pitch, but I had to first hear how you ended up in baseball when you were an NFL fan. So MLB's MLB last week was opening day.
Yes.
Describe that feeling.
I was really excited, and actually in my, so we're, I didn't, I was, we weren't in the office on opening day, many of us. So I was home and I had every TV turned on to every channel that was in and around the game of baseball. The volume was high. My laptop, you know, CNN, the sports channel, ESPN rather, was on. Like I had all the channels going, MLB Network, et cetera. I was really excited. And what really got me was that my peers and the people that I, excuse me, work with, everybody was so excited. There was like this energy, even virtually, that I could feel. And I think it had to do a lot too with, hey, we're having another season in a pandemic. Like we actually pulled this off. We're actually going to launch. So it was exciting. I felt a great sense of passion and pride that we were able, you know, to again get through the summer, get through spring training. I mean, the season last year, and then spring training, and get back again. So here we are, and I'm excited about what's to come.
I just was already visualizing when you were like, if I didn't want to be rude and close my eyes, but my eyes were closed as you were speaking, and I was imagining opening day, and in any element, it felt real. I could actually smell the popcorn and the peanuts. Like it just, you gave me such a great picture of that dynamicism and that experience that you just brought to life, you know. So thank you for sharing that. How are you, how does your team support all of the games and, you know, the festivities all around opening day? Like, how was that celebration? How did you experience that?
So in my role, it's actually really interesting. So I oversee human resources, diversity, and office operations. So each of my teams played a very different role in making this come to fruition. But what I thought was really neat, and what really hit me the nearest and dearest to my heart, was this. You know, our New York Central office is right now open to essential employees who must be in the building only, right? And the numbers in New York are really high. So we're trying to be really thoughtful about health and safety. So we have a group of just under 100 essential workers in that office. And we were really, really worried about them not having an opening day experience. So our office operations team and our food vendor got together and they decorated. You know, they had like mini champagne bottles and, you know, theme style food and gift boxes and all kinds of stuff, so that when our people came in, they could feel that energy. And our building actually has these really cool, like life-size posters of players in the windows, and we have player like flags on the flag poles. And, you know, somebody actually called me with like a video and they're showing me this. And I'm like, this is awesome. So, you know, the folks that are keeping the lights on, literally, the folks that are putting themselves, you know, in harm's way, commuting in and out and all of that every day, to bring them that, to me, was just heartwarming. And I'm just really glad we were able to provide them with that experience.
So let's go back 12 months. You are within your first 12 months at the MLB, completely pivoting careers from law to sports, right? How have you, and now you're the chief people and culture officer in a whole different industry,
Yeah.
completely. So the pivot, I want to know less about the pivot and more about the skill set. Like, you come in this breath of fresh air, you know, bringing these experiences, creating the energy wherever anybody is, you know, whether they're in the office working, you know, as the frontline workers, or they're at home watching on their screens. You just painted this amazing picture that wasn't even the picture. It was the energy that I felt as you were talking about it. What have you brought? How do you translate your skill sets, and how have you evolved them to bring you to MLB?
So that's a great question, Shelley. For me, it really was, you know, everything you said is like, so, I mean, complete pivot, complete change, complete different environment, different culture, everything. And I knew that I had a lot to learn. And I knew that I didn't know what I didn't know. So the first thing that I did, and this is a skill set that I've learned over the years, is I went in with an attitude of listen and learn. Listen and learn. Do not judge, do not pre-assess, do not come to any foregone conclusions on what needs to change or be fixed or what's broken or what's working and not working within the first 90 days.
Yeah.
That's my rule, right? It is the first 90 days. We're going to listen, we're going to learn, we're going to meet, we're going to greet, we're going to build relationships. And that's what I did. I'll never forget talking to the deputy commissioner and the commissioner before I started saying, okay, who do I need to meet? Who do I need to know? Both in the central office, across the clubs, who are the people that I need to meet? And before I even started, my executive assistant and I were on the phone and we were mapping out my onboarding meet and greet plan. And by the way, all of these meetings happen by Zoom, right? So the skill set of being able to, build relationships, connect the dots, listen, get to know people, and really take all of that in was critically important. And what was beautiful about this process was not only that I got to meet people and build really good relationships, but through those conversations, well, let me back up. Before the conversations, I thought very carefully about the types of questions I wanted to ask people. So it's obviously a meet and greet, we have personal talk at the beginning, get to know each other, but then it is, hey, I'm new here, you're the head of whatever, or you work in whatever club, and I'd like to know from you the following 5 things. I'd like to get your thoughts and perspectives on the following 5 things. I consistently did that across the 30 to 50 people I met right off the bat. And Shelley, what was so awesome about that is out of those discussions came themes around what's great, what can we do better, what people are excited about. So I actually wasn't left having to figure out, hey, what do I think is broken?
Mhm.
What do I think is going well? People told me, and that informed the strategies and the focus areas that I have decided to move forward with. So it really was important. And when I say listen and learn, I really mean listen to hear, not listen to respond, right? And that indeed is a skill set. So how many times are we in a meeting and people are talking and we're ready to like jump in and answer them before they've even finished their thought? So listening to understand, listening to learn was really, really something that I honed in on, from day one.
Listen to hear. That is just so incredibly important. It's true. We sit in meetings and most of us have the respect to not interrupt and to listen because it's someone else's turn. But we're not listening and hearing. We're jumping right in with what we wanted to say, And by the way, what you might have wanted to say might have been different once you listen to someone ahead of you. So you need that pause moment to listen, hear, reflect, and represent and transmit back. What was some of the best questions you asked? Like, if you had 50 meet and greets digitally, and you're listening and learning beyond the basic questions, of getting to know someone and what do they do, what were some of the best questions you found unlocked the learning that you got?
So, some of the ones that come to mind right now are things like, okay, so I'm people and culture, HR, diversity, office operations. So everything I do touches our people. So questions around, how do you experience the culture at MLB or in your club? What do you think makes this a strong culture? What do you think is missing in this culture? What are some of the things that you think we should be doing that we're not doing? What are some of the things that you think we're doing well? And what are we missing? What do we need to be thinking about that perhaps no one's thought about before? So I walked away with tons of insights on, again, areas of opportunity, areas of strength, and areas where we had gaps. And what was so cool about it was that everybody was saying the same thing. So it wasn't, when I went ultimately to the commissioner and others to say, hey, here's my game plan, here's my proposed strategy, it was from the voice of our people at all levels. And it just made it so much easier to socialize, and then to put actions around it. And now, start to activate and move forward on some of those strategic priorities.
Wow, I'm obsessed with this. And if you can't talk about this, don't talk about it. But what are some of the things that you, and of course, you're starting in a COVID culture. And so as someone taught me this, I heard this loud and clear, we're not going back to work. We've been working. We're going back to an office at some point in whatever hybrid fashion or, whatever. What are some of the things that you are incorporating culturally, if you can share? I'm not asking you for secrets, but some big key findings that that you brought to the commissioner to say, our culture has been, great with some, things that we need to improve on then. But moving forward, here are some recommendations that will go a long way to creating this people culture of caring and sharing and respect and belonging.
No, it's a good one. I think one of the things that I picked up right away, and this is not just from talking to folks in baseball, but by the way, this listening tour also encompassed me talking to people across the sports industry, is that a lot of us in the industry take the view that because we're in sports, people are happy to be here because they're in sports, and that's good enough, right? And what I heard loud and clear through a lot of my conversations, both in and out of baseball, was, Michele, it's a new day. It's not good enough that we're just in sports. So that issue of retention, engagement, and commitment to the organization, being in sports and saying that you're in sports may not be good enough to keep your people. It may not be good enough to engage your people. So thinking about building out things like employee recognition programs, thinking about being intentional about employee development and making sure that every employee has a path, right, to grow in their career and can see a path to grow in their career, and your organization is critical. To your point, I stepped in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of all these social justice issues. So the other issue is, hey, Michele, we're not how do we talk about this stuff, right? How do we take care of our people in a pandemic? What do we do? So a lot of my first actions were around, first and foremost, health and safety, navigating COVID. And then second, okay, we're going through some really crazy times right now. Let's engage and figure out how we have candid conversations about some of these issues. And then, oh, by the way, how do we think long-term about development, recognition, et cetera? So those are some of the things that I started to do right away. And the other thing I picked up is that we have a large group of professionals across the sport that, are passionate and so committed to what they do. And they're great folks, and everybody is trying to do the right thing, but everybody doesn't always necessarily connect and align, right? So I've been known and I've been told over my career that I'm a dot connector and I'm a people connector. So I've gone out of my way to think about ways to connect folks who are literally working on some of the very same things and not necessarily talking to each other, just because they just don't realize they should be talking to each other, right? So connecting dots, forming some different subcommittees or working groups here and there has been really helpful, I think, for the organization over the last couple of months, and getting people aligned and coordinated, which allows us to be more strategic and ultimately have a better impact.
I was thinking of the baseball analogy as you were saying that, of connecting the dots, because obviously first baseman or first baseman and second and third and outfielders and shortstops, and they are the best in their field. But when you have them for a day or whatever, play a different spot, not that that's the role they're going to, but they get that perspective from the person at third and second. And, and it's the same thing. Sometimes you don't think to mix and match different people because it's not the natural, first baseman hang out with first basemen and they catch up on, whoa, how do you do that? But when you move people around and the sharing in the not necessarily the typical linear color within the lines way, you actually create new alliances. And that's why we say meet people that are different than you, because that brings more value. So connecting the dots in the nonlinear way is really important too.
I love that, because what you just spoke to is the power of inclusion, right? It's the power of inclusion. The more voices you have on any topic, the more voices you have on an issue, the better the outcome. I mean, I'll be honest and say, I mean, all my years doing people related work, culture related work, I'll be honest and say that, when you get all these different voices around a table, it doesn't necessarily mean that coming to a decision is easier. In fact, the decision is harder, because you don't have groupthink anymore. You don't have everybody marching to the beat of the same drummer, if you will, but everybody's bringing different opinions, and you actually have to, again, hear them, listen to hear, not listen to respond. You have to talk through the various points of concerns, the options, et cetera. And then you have to actually, in many instances, come to a meeting of the minds on what is the right path forward. And so it takes a little bit more time. It may be a little bit more painful. Personalities may not all align, but at the end of the day, the end product is so much more meaningful. So that's one of the reasons I just love this work that I'm doing in this way, because I actually see it. I see it happening. And what's cool is there are so many instances where, I'm leading one of these discussions, or something's happening and you can see a bright light go off in someone's eyes, or, someone says, oh, wow, I didn't think of that. Or, wow, I didn't actually realize that our employees in this role were having that challenge, or whatever it might be. And you see the aha moments, and those aha moments, again, lead to, I think, a great discussion, coming up with the best solutions.
It's collective wisdom,
Yes.
It really is so important. We have a lot of comments and questions. So please, everyone, reminder again, send in your comments, your thoughts, your questions. Felina, 20 years ago, I was pursuing a sales career in professional sports, MLB, NBA, NFL. I was able to secure internships, but never to get hired in full-time roles. After many attempts, I pivoted to hospitality industry, focusing on sales and technology, and had a successful career, but my passion is still sports industry. Similarly to hospitality, is very close-knit, but difficult to break into by outsiders. What advice would you give to someone wanting to pursue a career in sports today? And I just want to say what's interesting, because my kids studied sports in school, and it was in the hospitality bucket. Sport was in the hospitality bucket of curriculum, which is interesting that Felina is in hospitality, but her focus was sports. And so what's your best advice, Michele?
So my advice, Felina, on this one would be, build relationships, and, get engaged in industry or sports industry associations and organizations. So things like the Pro Sports Assembly and things like that, because you build relationships really matter. They matter more than I think people realize, because when people get to know you, your sponsors end up being the people who you didn't even know were watching you, that put your name on the table in a room when a job opportunity comes up. So build relationships. Long gone are the days when you just go on Indeed.com, you post for a job, and you actually get even called for an interview, because organizations, there's such war for talent. There's such a high competition in the job market. So you've got to build relationships. You've got to be connected. And I would also say that when you join any type of industry organization, if they have projects, committees, things you can get engaged in to show how you lead and to show your skill sets, that's where it's at. Because what's going to happen is someone may notice you that you didn't even know was watching, and will approach you about that opportunity. I mean, for me, that's literally how every move I've made has been associated with someone watching me that I didn't know was watching me, that called me up and said, hey, we have this opportunity. Would you be interested in putting your name in the hat? So that's what it's all about. It's funny, I have 3 young adult sons. They are 18, 20, and 23, or almost 23. In a week, he'll be 23. And I tell them all the time, I'm like, boys, it's not just about your grades. It's about you showing up as a leader, you getting engaged, your teachers, your coaches, people knowing who you are and what you have to offer, because they will think of you and they will come to you when opportunities present themselves. So that's the same exact advice. I would share here.
Well, and also expand your network. It's what you said. Don't be afraid to expand your network. The worst thing that can happen is you get a no. The best thing that can happen is you get a yes. And whether it's volunteering or, engaging like you are, Felina, with Michele right now, you are opening your world up in ways that, 20, 30 minutes ago, you didn't put yourself out there. So thank you for that. Keisha, hey, Keisha. Has a question. What advice would you give dealing with someone that listens to respond and doesn't listen to hear?
Oh, I love that one. So Keisha, I hate to break it to you, but you have to call them on it. And there are many ways you call them on it. So I've been told that I am a very diplomatic disruptor.
Diplomatic. You need to change that. Michele Meyer-Shipp, diplomatic disruptor.
Yes, it's like, you know what? Whoever the person is that's listening to respond, you have to find a very diplomatic way and the moment and the time in which you reach out to them to say, hey, can we talk? I do this a lot with folks, and I say things like, hey, we just come out of, let's just give an example. We come out of a meeting and someone does that to me, right? I'll say something like, hey, Shelley, do you have a minute and can we just have a candid conversation? I really just want to talk through this with you, and just say it. Or say, hey, Shelley, can you help me understand something? When I shared this thing, you just jumped in, but did you hear what I was trying? Did you understand what I was? So you very diplomatically try to help the person understand that they didn't really hear you. And the best way to do that is by posing a question to them. Like, help me understand. Did you understand my point? What did you think about what I had to say? And they start to then realize that perhaps they weren't even listening. So diplomatic disruption is the name of the game.
Okay, I love that. I'm known as the chief troublemaker, and someone the other day someone fixed it a little bit for me. They said, you're actually the chief good troublemaker. And I said, thank you for prefacing that, like the good witch and the bad witch.
I'm writing that down. I like that.
I said, but that's like the diplomatic disruptor, because oftentimes, if you go in on the attack mode, people are not going to listen no matter what. They're going to go in like this. But diplomatic disruptor is asking the question, and the way you even said it was so gentle, even though it was strong. It was grace with grit in such a great way. Fantastic. I thought that was fantastic. I want to ask you another question, because so many lessons learned. Tell me about, in your 12 months, some of the best lessons you've learned, or not the regrets, but mistakes.
Yeah.
They're not even mistakes. Things you did that you are going to do differently moving forward.
So, Shelley, that's a great one. So here's the deal. I had to jump in so fast, right? I had to jump in so quickly because I took on a role as the head of HR in the midst of a pandemic, right? So there was no real onboarding for me. It was immediate, like, crisis management, okay? So to that end, I often forget how new I am. And I am constantly reminding myself that I don't know what I don't know. Mm. So I literally, because I am like, I'm like, hey, I had my listening tour. I heard everything I needed to hear. I'm off to the races. But there's so many layers to the organization, right? There are so many people and so many departments across Major League Baseball that do things that I don't yet fully understand. So I would say my lesson learned is, Michele, you don't know what you don't know about this organization. Michele, slow down, wait a minute, and make sure that you ask all the right people the right questions. So just this morning, I had something come up and I went to go handle it. And before I went to handle it, I said, wait a minute, let me ask a couple of people if there's anyone else that I need to engage in this that may own this topic. And sure enough, wouldn't you know, when I asked, there's 2 key people I needed to rope in. Had I not roped them in, they would have been like, what is she doing? Like, why is she swimming in my lane? like, that's not her lane. Like, why'd she do that? So I have to constantly remember that I really don't know what I don't know, and I have a lot to learn. So I'm trying to strike that balance every single day. And then I'll tell you this, I mean, a few times when I've stepped in it and moved too quick, I just own it. I'm like, you know what? Hey, Shelley, I'm sorry. Like, I didn't actually even realize that this was a thing and that somebody actually does this already. So, hey, let's do it. Hey, let's do it together, or hey, just take it, whatever it is. So that's one of the things that I have to constantly be careful of, because I just never had a natural honeymoon period, or, you know, that long lull of a get to know everybody kind of thing. I just jumped in so fast. I almost feel like I've been here for like 6 years.
I actually love that you did have to jump in so fast, because you don't have to follow the textbook legacy, whatever. You get to create forward in whatever you're doing. You have to learn as you go. And as long as you are listening to hear, and then, you know, really creating the culture from
Yes.
today forward versus having to retrofit where you have to undo things, I actually think that's a wonderful blessing. I mean, I'm saying, I'm sure it was, you know, a little stressful along the way, but I think that, you know, we always say great innovation, great opportunity
Yeah.
comes from being in crisis mode, and you certainly are jumping on that one, which is fantastic. Women, and there was a question about a seat at the table. You know, have you always felt you have, even when you have been, you know, you've had the seat at the table in your level, have you always felt you've been listened to be heard, and impacting change at an equal level? So let's start with that. You as a woman in law, now in sports, where we still have some work to do on representation, but PSA, Pro Sports Assembly, is doing so much work in really shining the light, showcasing, you know, women doing remarkable things. Have you had those challenges?
So I'm just trying to figure out how to get these words out the right way. Yes, I have, first of all. I think the challenges, though, and I'm trying to figure out how to explain this. I hope it comes out right. The challenge has been, I think, a self-imposed challenge that links to what some of you may have heard of as the imposter syndrome. I mean, my last job, I was a partner at KPMG professional services firm. And I had a seat at the table. And, you know, in my prior job, I was the global head of diversity. I had a seat at the CEO's table, right? So I'm sitting at these tables, and I'll be honest, from time to time, you know, I look around the room and I'm like, I'm the only woman, or I'm the only person of color, or how about I'm the only woman and person of color? Okay, this is awkward, right? So there are these moments when I'm like, well, maybe I shouldn't say that now, or maybe it's my own self-doubt, maybe, or self-questioning that has been the challenge. So it's funny, I just said this to a group I was talking to the other day. Another skill that I've had to master in this way is managing my mindset. And when I say manage my mindset, I mean not letting that little imposter that pops up here every now and again, not letting it take the day. And I'm constantly reminding myself, like literally, I'll be in a meeting and somebody will say something and I'll have this crazy idea. And I'm like, okay, that's a crazy idea. Don't say that. And I'm like, well, wait a minute. You're in charge of HR. Like, you need to say it. You know, and I'm literally having this conversation with myself.
Hello, right?
in the meeting, like right there. And then I'm like, no, just say it. So I've gotten really comfortable now just saying it. Again, in a diplomatic, disruptive kind of way. But I'd say, you know, 5 years ago, when I was in my first like real big leadership role, and I was sitting at like the big people's table, I wasn't so sure that I really had license to do that. So my message to everybody would be, regardless of whatever table it is you're sitting at, if you're sitting at that table, use your voice. Use your voice and manage your mindset. I think the key is, hey, everybody may not like what you have to hear, but that's okay, because it goes back to what we talked about before. Inclusion is different opinions, different perspective, different ideas. My only point to you on your area of responsibility and using your voice is just use it wisely, use it the right way. Don't be a jerk, don't be mean, don't be nasty, don't cut somebody off. It's the way you deliver the message and the way you raise the idea that matters just as much as what the idea is.
Okay, so imposter syndrome is very real. Men and women both have it. Men just ignore that voice in their head or that critic on their shoulder, and women let that voice get louder. We let it amplify. So I want to add one more piece of advice that came from Wendy Clark. So thank you, Wendy. She says, just shut that voice up in your head. You just have to shut that voice up, believe in you, put it out there. You've got nothing to lose. The worst thing that can happen is you'll get a no. The best thing that can happen, once again, is you get a yes. And we always think that, oh, is that a dumb idea? Or is that a smart?
Yeah.
I gotta tell you, you're gonna miss the most important moments if you don't share, what you're thinking. So
Shelley, let me piggyback on that too and say this. You just reminded me of another thing that I do from time to time. If it's not something that I need to address in the moment at a meeting, and I'm really struggling with how to handle it, talk to a mentor or a friend, somebody in your trusted circle. I do a lot, don't laugh at this, but I do a lot of bouncing off my boys. My boys, have this.
we have to have the boys on next time.
Right? Oh yeah.
Let's
You'd love
bring the
them.
boys.
You
Yeah.
would love them.
I can't wait.
They are so, but they're Generation Z, right? So they have a whole different perspective. They have points of view. They've taught me things and shown me things that I didn't even know to know were a thing. So I use them a lot. And I have what I would say a small kind of board of mentors, if you will, like my trusted advisors, career advisors. And every now and again, I'll call one of them and say, hey, I've got this thing going on that I need to handle. And I think I need to say it, but I just want to make sure I'm going to say it the right way. And I'll kind of role play it. So use your peers, your mentors, or heck, if like me, even your kids, if they're, ready to have that conversation to help you navigate how you do that.
Okay, I have so many questions that are coming in, but I want to get to one first that is very important, which is about representation. So I'm the co-founder of See Her. If you can see her, you can be her. And one of the things that PSA is spending a lot of time on is representation of women in professional sports leadership. Why does it matter? Why do we need, beyond just representation, to fill a quota, which, I always say, don't fill a quota, we make the table better. Why do you think this matters?
Oh my God, it so matters. So listen, again, it goes back to something I said before, that diversity of background and perspective is going to drive better outcomes, right? Having all voices at the table. Here's what I've learned over the years, and I've said it a few times during this conversation. We don't know what we don't know about one another's experience, right? We don't know what we don't know about, our organizations. So if we're in a space of groupthink where it's all men or it's all women or it's all one group versus another, we are not going to have a full perspective. So it matters because those diverse perspectives matter. Those diverse perspectives, those different opinions and insights, that's going to drive innovation. It drives engagement. There has been tons of research and thought leadership done on this topic. And at the end of the day, diversity of thought and perspective and background drives innovation. It drives inclusion. And for those who only care about the bottom line, it actually drives profitability. It truly does. So literally, that's why this matters beyond just checking a box on some numbers.
Well, I also think it goes back to what you said before about celebrating and the experiences that you created for the frontline workers, that were in the office. And, when you have more feminine leadership, those soft skills of nurturing and empathy and compassion, and I'm not saying female, but men and women that have the soft strengths of, empathy, we see more focus, not just on the bottom line financially, but also on the ESGs and the caring. of people and putting people at the center of what we believe in. And I have to say for you, Michele, as a woman of color, as you said, you're a woman of color. The representation, seeing you in the role that you're in, also creates the reflection and the inspiration for girls all over the world to dream big, to dream bigger, to imagine the possibilities, reach for the stars, like you talked about, the sparkling of those stars. They are going to reach for those stars and know that they can achieve whatever they can imagine. And that is because you are leading the way. Another question that came in from Rebecca: what advice would you give for maintaining your momentum and drive in your career?
So a couple of things is keep growing and learning, right? So make sure that you are really thoughtful about your own professional development along the way. That's something that I've always done. Every year, I think about my own professional development plan. I don't wait for my leader to tell me what it is. Like, I think about what are my career goals? What are my short-term goals? What are my long-term goals? And what are the things I need to do to get there? So I kind of do, if you will, a vision board. And it's funny, just this past January, I did a vision board. And I had a vision board that was personal, and I had a vision board that was professional. And that really is just being intentional and thoughtful about what you want. And so you have a plan. So that helps you with momentum, and it helps you move things forward. The other thing I would say is, make time for self-care, because I think for all of us through this pandemic, especially, we sit in front of this camera all day. We're going nonstop. There are no more boundaries between work life and the day and the night, and work hours and non-work hours. So you've got to take time to recharge and re-energize. I mean, believe it or not, you guys are probably going to laugh when I say this, but I actually am pretty much an introvert. And like doing this, I love to do it. But at the end of the day, I am exhausted. I mean, I am fried. And I get to the dinner table and the boys laugh at me. They're like, okay, let's talk about everything we need to talk about now. Because at 8:30, when you go sit down, to watch something on TV, you're going to be in a coma in 5 minutes, like knocked out of sleep. And I just pass out, like I'm zapped. So I know for me that I have to manage my energy, and managing that energy sets me up to keep the momentum. I mean, you all read the news. We're dealing with a lot right now, right? So I need to handle my energy. I need to manage my energy so that I have the stamina to keep moving forward. So there's a professional aspect to having a goal and managing your career and your development. And then there's a personal aspect to imagining how you manage self-care. Both are critically important. You can't have one without the other to maintain that momentum.
Well, you also have one energy source, and so you have to choose how you are going to spend it thoughtfully. So I don't think you're an introvert. I think you're thoughtful and focused. And so I think that one of the things we're working on is lexicon too, because introvert, you are thoughtful and focused. And by the way, incredibly diplomatically disruptive. You can't be an introvert if you are going to also,
It's true.
Listen to hear and then be thoughtful in the response, because you are bringing in all kinds of people. You are thoughtful and focused, which you could call it whatever you want, but to me, that's really, the definition. I just thank you, Carl. I see your comment. As a man, I get so much from this forum about my behaviors, thinking, and understanding. Thank you for sharing that. Laura Dixon, I need to give you a big shout out. I don't know if we can pull you up. I know this is out of character, but I am the chief troublemaker, so I break the rules all the time. I would love for you to come up, tell everyone how they can engage with PSA, because we have amazing, thoughtful, focused, diplomatic disruptors like Michele in PSA doing remarkable things across sports. So while we're figuring out how to bring you in, if we can, to say hello and tell everyone how to get involved, you are leading the way. Thank you so much. Before, Michele, we say goodbye, which is hello, because I think our goodbye is going to be a continuous hello and because I just want to wrap my arms around you and give you a big hug. Best advice for our next generation of female leaders, female leaders in pro sports, in the pro sports industry. What's your best advice?
My best advice is to own your career, and to really be thoughtful about your purpose, and have a plan. And so it's all kind of some of the pieces I talked about before. And, be true to yourself. Make sure you're doing something that you enjoy. I mean, look, we spend a lot of time in these jobs. They're intense, no matter what it is that we're doing. So find your passion, map your plan, and own it. Don't wait for someone to tell you what your next move is. Don't wait for someone to give you that feedback. If you don't get the feedback, if you don't have anyone telling you what the plan is or what your career path is, you have to go ask for it. I think one of the things that we tend to do as women, I mean, we're helpers. We're the ones who are always trying to fix everything, and we're worried about everybody else. But you know what? We've got to worry about ourselves too. So own your career, take leadership, build relationships. They matter. And the final thing I'll say is, and I alluded to this earlier, raise your hand. Let people know that you're willing to help on stretch assignments, projects, etc., because that's how you might get noticed in a way that you might not otherwise in your day job.
Fantastic. We always say when purpose meets passion, you're unstoppable. And I have to tell you, Michele, you are unstoppable and just so admire, and you inspire me, and I'm sure everyone else that has been joining. So thank you for all that you do. Laura, I don't see you coming on, but please send in the chat how everyone can engage with PSA. Pro Sports Assembly. I always go to authority because it's also the authority on, where we're going. And it's so funny. Talking about MLB, I travel a lot. I'm a 3 million miler on United, and everywhere I went, I have 3 kids, also slightly older than yours, actually a little bit older than yours. But everywhere I'd go,
No, you don't. No, you don't.
Oh yeah, yeah. I'd pick up pennants from all the different teams. And so my kids were like, Mom, go travel more, go to this, because they were all sports, crazy. So the different sports teams, I would pick up the different pennants, and they would learn about the players and the sports. And so MLB, I had a whole wall, and then I would hang them on the ceiling. And it's how they would learn about all the athletes and the leagues and everything like that. So thank you for all that you do, for leading the way. I am obsessed with the diplomatic disruptor. Listen to hear, don't listen to respond. Be thoughtful, be focused, and remember, if you don't put the oxygen on yourself first, you will not be able to help others around you. So there you go, Laura Dixon. Join the assembly, www.prosportsassembly.org/join. And Kimberly says she took a lot of notes. It was a treat to listen to you, Michele, and it was a treat for me as well. Thank you so much. Very grateful.
Thanks so much. Nice to see you, Shelley. Everybody take care. Bye.